Good morning, everyone. How are you? Welcome to this amazing session. I would like to start by thanking the organizers of this event, and also I want to stand on all existing protocols that's been made. Thank you for the councils, the president, the chairman, the founding director for the Emergency and Crisis Risk Management Institute. It's a privilege to be able to share knowledge with you. Secondly, I am incredibly sorry that I will not be able to join you this morning, as I am unavoidably away, locked down, studying somewhere, adult education. So please forgive me. But I was going to stream it also live, but we thought it might be easier also to have a contingency plan and to do this so that at least you can enjoy the full benefits. So my topic today is about risk management approach to climate change impact in Nigeria. And I started by putting a picture there, which I picked from TVC, just looking at the image of the impact of flood in Nigeria at the moment and the implications for us as a people. So please join with me. If you have questions, please send it to the organizers. I'll be live to be able to answer your questions or to look at some insights as well. So I'll be sharing risk management approach, but with a slightly twist. And let's see how it goes. First, I want to introduce the company I represent. It's called Conrad Clark Nigeria Limited. I am one of the founding partners. We do amazing stuff. And just as a way of introduction, let me just show you what we do in a minute.
As a business, you have a vision. Your primary goal is to succeed. But there are unexpected circumstances that could present threats to your success.
So sorry, I was not sure whether the sound quality was out the other time. I hope it's working this time around. Let's see.
As a business, you have a vision. Your primary goal is to succeed. But there are unexpected circumstances that could present threats to your success. And that's where we come in. At Conrad Clark, we exist to make sure you achieve your dreams. Working with your people and resources to assess the likelihood of an event occurring, and then provide you with the tools and techniques, the processes, and the understanding of how to respond to these events. We provide you with the knowledge and industry know-how to help you minimize business threats and maximize opportunities. For over a decade, we have helped leaders like you to improve decision-making, planning, and prioritization. The end goal is so that you can succeed. Conrad Clark Limited, inspiring possibilities.
And it's so true that we do inspire possibilities. Just a little bit about myself. People call me Oga Risk. Please feel free to call me Oga Risk as well. I am an adjunct professor, I'm a technocrat, I'm a certified risk fellow, I'm a chartered insurer. The list goes on, but I would like to say, if you want to know more about me, connect with me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on my YouTube, just through Joachim Adinro or Oga Risk, you'll find me there. Quite a lot that I train as an actuary, but I am focusing on strategy, risk, and performance at the moment. Okay. Let's get into the subject. Now, there's a question I often ask every time about predictable surprise. We're talking about risk management approach to climate crisis in Nigeria, or perhaps globally. But let me focus on Nigeria. If you look at the image on your right on the screen, you see that there's something that's becoming a normal, a natural thing with the occurrence, especially in the last few years. And I asked the question, what's the probability of another flood crisis in Lagos, say in the next few months? 10%, 40%, 60%, 85%, 90%. It'd be nice if I was there live, I would have loved you to just tell me or to carry out the vote. But what I'm trying to say is that we have seen this idea of the same crisis happening over and over again in Nigeria. We find ourselves repeating the same thing. And sometimes I ask the question, it's normal now for people to go to the filling station, queue up. It's affecting businesses, individuals. It's affecting almost everybody in the nation. It's affecting, manufacturing, this fuel crisis. But it's been happening. So there's a review by the Harvard Business Review. There's an illustration here on the left. It said, if there is a possibility of an emerging threat, there are 3 questions that we must ask. 3 questions. 1, can we recognize that this is an emerging threat? I think for us in Nigeria, it's not new. The fuel crisis has been happening over and over. So there's a recognition of it. You will agree with me, won't you? I believe so. The second one is terms of prioritization. Have we ranked this crisis as extremely important for us to deal with? Who is ensuring that this is a critical thing so that households, businesses, Nigerians are not facing this recurring problem of fuel crisis as an example? And the final one is resource mobilization. What are we doing to ensure that it's not happening again? And the argument was that if you're able to recognize, prioritize, and mobilize effective resources, you have a chance to have effective preventative response. And the question today is this, that if something is happening over and over again, you could almost tell it's going to be a surprise but predictable one. You could tell it's going to happen. So are we in the middle of a crisis in Lagos right now? Yes, we are. Is normalcy? Could it grow? Yes. Will it affect Christmas yet? Will it affect prices and increases transport fare for those who are traveling? Yes. Have we experienced it before? So many times. So why are we not able to deal with this kind of behavior? And that's the question, number one, I want you guys to ponder on. If you look at the picture at the bottom, it's the image of flooding in Lagos. We're all used to or familiar to seeing this now. And it is not new. And we go through it every year, which is perhaps even more closer to the subject we're looking at this morning. So let me look at global versus local climate landscape. So we just finished COP27. Most of you are familiar with it. And there was a landmark victory at this event. So there was a breakthrough arrangement to provide loss and damage funding for vulnerable countries hit hard by climate-related disasters. So now going forward, there was the delegates were celebrating a few days ago about this breakthrough, but there is a condition. It also emphasized the need to strengthen systematic observation and to achieve universal coverage of early warning systems. So it's not enough to say, if something happens, we're going to give you money because you're a vulnerable country, because the West or the global North, they've actually industrialized the world and they've polluted the world more. And the African countries or other lesser countries of the South are feeling the impact of this global climate crisis. But also, what can we do now to observe early warning signs? And I think for me, that's the first sign of risk approach, a risk management thinking, a proactive thinking we're not just going to be paying you money because you're within the vulnerable country, but we want to ensure that you have systems in place to observe early warning signs. And then in Nigeria, we launched the Nigerian Climate Change Act 2021. Most of you are familiar with it. So the framework was to achieve low gas emission, which we're all fighting and working towards. They established the Council of Climate Change and provide the council to collaborate with the Inland Revenue, FIRS, to deliver a mechanism for carbon tax in Nigeria. That's a very interesting thing. How many people are aware that there is this thing in place in Nigeria. How many organizations, how many of your organizations are aware that there's something called carbon tax? And the proceed from the carbon tax will be used to fund climate change fund proposed by there. So there's supposed to be a climate tax. What does it look like? Who will be charged? I don't even go into the area of carbon credits, whether that tax is for those who are polluting or behaviors that are contributing to affecting our planet, affecting the Nigerian environment. What does it look like? How are we going to operationalize this act? I mean, I can't see how I'm going to talk about risk management without all these things. And you're going to understand why in a minute, why I cannot talk about risk management without understanding this context. This is where we are. Oh, that's where we are now. Yeah. Now, I hate pulling out definitions or trying to say what is obvious. But for the purpose of illustration and what I want to do this morning, what is climate change? And I really love John Morris' definition. He said, long-term changes in temperature and weather patterns. Are we experiencing these long-term changes in Nigeria? Yes. Are we experiencing frequent rain, cold weather, extreme weather? Yes, we are. Some have argued it's not real. Some argue it's real. It doesn't matter, but something is happening to our world. The frequency of flood, the frequency of high temperature, the extreme weather, they're increasing. So statistically, we've got to pay attention to this. So these changes might be caused by natural processes, but since the 18th century, someone said human actions have actually been the primary cause of climate change. So John argues that it is as a result of our behavior, the human behavior, human activities actually increasing this climate change. And if I'm going to be a little bit cheeky, I can say that by even delivering this lecture online, I've saved gas out emission. Perhaps I will have traveled from the island to Ikeja this morning and then pollute the air by certain number of things. But the fact that I'm able to do this, we could argue that we have saved a little bit, not much, you know. And again, there's a question out there about how do we ensure that as human beings, we still need to gather together and also use technology to minimize the impact of pollution. And that's not for this session, but that's another argument out there. Okay, so, but also I'm talking about risk management approach, so I have to talk about what is risk. And I like to talk about this definition because I am not assuming that when we talk about risk, we're all speaking from the same lens. So I want you to see the lens through which I am looking at risk and what risk management is. For me, this is the definition I have loved and I fell in love with and I'm working with, and it's the definition I'm passionate about. It is the ISO 31000 2018 risk management standard definition, which is risk has three components. It has an effect. It is uncertain. Let me say that it has not happened. Risk is uncertain. And this is really critical. When something has happened and you're in the middle of it, you're in the middle of a crisis. It has happened, you're experiencing it. It is certain. But finally, the risk is, it has effect, it is uncertain, and it will impact on an objective. So that tells me that if we're not careful, we might be talking about risk out of context. We might be talking about theoretical risks. We might be talking about risk in the way that has no value or not material or not significant. So for risk to be significant, it must of necessity have effect on specific set objective or goals. This is really important. I'll give you an example. A common example I do give is that if my objective is to be healthy, that's my objective. So I need to figure out what is the threat to me not being healthy. First, overweight or obesity, if I become overweight. And I can look at the why will I become overweight, the causes. I can look at the outcomes or the consequences of being overweight. And when I understand that, Or I can say the potential, if I want to be healthy and fit, the possibility of me becoming overweight can be a risk factor, because that's not happening. I'm not overweight now, hopefully. But the possibility of becoming overweight will be a risk factor because it is uncertain, but it's likely to happen. And I look at the causes and the impact. So for that risk, first, it has effect. 2, it is uncertain. 3, it's key to me because it's going to affect one of my objectives, which is to stay fit and to be healthy. So you cannot, and we cannot discuss risk where those variables are not clearly articulated. That's the first thing I want us to know this morning. Then number 2, risk has, the effect can be positive or negative. So risk can actually be a good opportunity or bad, a threat. It can be good. People don't talk about good risk, opportunity. When people think about risk, every time you talk about something bad happening, but that's not true. It is the effect of what is uncertain that could create something good or something bad. I hope you're with me so far. And then when we look at the management is a process of reaching organization goals or corporate goals, working with and through people and other resources. So when you combine the two together, it is a process of reaching, understanding the effect of uncertainties of organization, working with people and other resources. So we're looking at the process. It has a process. You're working with people, but it's about delivering, understanding the effect of uncertainty on the goals. Now, and also I like the risk management process by the ISO, which talks about how do we go about managing risk. So setting objectives, identify the upside or downside of threats or opportunities. So you can actually identify pure threat. You can identify pure opportunity as a risk. A risk can be an opportunity, something good that will potentially enhance or scale up or make the delivery or the outcome of the objective better. So we carry out huge, intense risk assessment, and there are loads of techniques. I'm not here this morning to tell us about the techniques of risk management or to go into different types. They are qualitative, they're quantitative, they're extreme number-driven techniques. Whatever we do with the techniques, it's for us to be able to identify, to evaluate, to look at the likelihood, to see the quantum, and to be able to assess it. That's what we're doing. And after we've done the identification, the assessment, we need to deal with it. We need to treat it. It's an opportunity. When we treat an opportunity, it gets better. When we treat a threat, it also gets better. So we scale up the probability of success for opportunity and we reduce the probability of failure for a threat. And that's what we do. And so those two things about increasing the probability of success and reducing the likelihood of failure, that's what's in the heart of risk management, to set goals or objectives. So we communicate, we monitor, we track, and we report it, we record it very well. Yeah, that's what the process is. Just stay with me for a minute. Now, if we pick a typical example of a risk identification tool, one of my favorites is called the bow tie technique. If you look at this technique here, you look at what is in the middle is the potential threat. What is the potential threat? What is likely to happen here? The potential here. What are the potential causes, root causes? What will make this thing happen? What are the potential outcomes or consequences of this thing? And then you find that you have pre-event actions. What are we going to do before that potential events happen? What can we do to minimize the probability of that potential event before it happens? And if it happens, or when it happens, what are we going to do after, post-event, as a remedial action to deal with the outcomes or the consequences? That's the general idea of how we frame or while we put visibility to risk. Yeah, stay with me. Now, look at this, for example. If we say in the middle, the potential is the possibility of increased temperature and weather patterns in Nigeria or in Lagos, to the extent that most houses, there'll be flood in at least 40 to 80 to 60% of land space in Nigeria. So an example follow here, look at some of the root causes of the cause and effect of climate change, which we can plug into that flag. Look at rapid industrialization, energy usage, agricultural practices, deforestation, consumer practices, livestock, transportation, resource extraction, pollution. These are some of the root causes. We look at the effect: rising temperature, rising sea level, unpredictability of weather patterns, and so on and so forth. So these results are actually giving us an idea of, if we're to plot this as an identification, we know the causes, we know the consequences or the outcome. There are lots of materials online that can tell us that. And it's interesting, I also saw a figure that said, estimate of how much money it will take to end global climate change range between 300 billion to 50 trillion over the next 2 decades. That's a resource I got from JustGiving, an online data that I found. Now, but identifying what to do and understanding the consequences is not enough. Why do we need to identify that potential event? Which objective do we have that is driving this thing? What's our specific objective as a people? Now, I've highlighted that role, accountability, and responsibility. The heart of what I want to talk about today is the fact that there are lots of skills professionals out there who could do thorough risk analysis, risk assessment, and put all the documents together. We have the Climate Risk Act in Nigeria. So I think we have fairly a bit of stuff we can work with. What is the problem? Do we have clarity of objectives? What are we trying to achieve? I think we do have some, but is it clear to all? Is it measurable? Is it specific? Now, let us assume that some of those objectives are clear and we know what they are. This question about who will be responsible and who will be accountable for these actions or these objectives is the biggest challenge in using risk management approach to handle climate impact. The question is not the fact that we don't understand the consequences. The question is not the fact that we don't have evidences, but who is going to do it? Who is going to give account of the tasks that have been got or they've assigned to them? Who is going to be responsible for implementing those things? And that is where we are in terms of the quality of not just applying risk management to climate impact, but across the board. That place of transparency, the place of accountability and responsibility. Because all the pre-action plan, somebody will have to be assigned. People have to be assigned with time frame. All the post-action plan, somebody will have to prepare them ahead of time before they happen. And if we're talking, we can sit and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Unless we have those who are doing and they are to be accountable for what they're doing publicly, transparently, with the intention of measuring their performance, we're going nowhere. And that is where I've been arguing for the past few years that risk management, it is a performance management tool. It drives performance management. So, and of course, it's important to look at some other techniques we have in managing disasters or risk management. For example, we have business continuity planning. Most of us in the room, we're familiar with the idea of business continuity planning. If we don't have a plan, we cannot even test it. We cannot implement it when we need it. Disaster recovery, the same thing. If you don't have a plan, if someone is not assigned to do those things and prepare before they happen, we can't activate it. Contingency plan, crisis management plan, all these things are mitigation plans to help to reduce the impact of a threat to a state, an organization, or a business. Now, I want to zero into terms of this risk management approach to manage climate. It's about leadership, and leadership has two dimensions: accountability, responsibility. You know, in Nigeria, we've been talking a lot about corporate governance. What I say is missing is this: who is willing to take responsibility on, and who is willing to be accountable for them publicly. Because when you put somebody who is responsible and somebody we have to be accountable, we have entered the level of performance, transparency, performance monitoring. So for us to be able to see change, for us to be able to see a risk-based approach to be effective in looking at climate impact in Nigeria, we need to first deal with the issue of accountability and responsibility. And let's look at some definitions there. Now, what is responsibility? Responsibility means you do the things you're supposed to do and accept the result of your actions. Now, since the Act has been established, the Climate Change Act, who are those responsible for implementing some of the critical milestones, some of the critical initiatives in those acts? And then let's come to accountability. Acceptance of responsibility for one's own action. It implies a willingness to be transparent, allowing others to observe and evaluate one's performance. Who is, or who are the guys, who are those responsible or accountable, who give account? Okay, since we launched this thing 1 year ago, these are the things we have done. These are the initiatives we have launched. This is how we are helping local government, state government, national businesses to begin to think about the impact of climate change. These are smaller steps we want to take the first year, and I am accountable, and these are the things I've done. These are my evidences. Without these two impact, without these two dimensions, I'm afraid, colleagues, that we will just be spinning around the circle and be saying the same thing, doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And we will not be able to measure the performance. So no matter what initiative we're putting together today in this room, no matter how much we put all this stuff together today, unless we have assigned individuals, named individuals, who will take on responsibility and who also make themselves accountable, willing to be scrutinized publicly. Unless we have those, we're going nowhere. So how do we ensure that of all the risk management techniques we have, there are lots of risk practitioners in the room, and I'm not here to tell us what we know, but I am trying to challenge and to see what are the difficulties, the things we need to deal with in order to have an effective risk-based approach to climate change in Nigeria, or perhaps globally. So let's take Lagos, for example. As a solution, you have two extremes. There's some parts in Lagos that are quite organized. There are others that are not yet. And looking at Lagos, for example, if we're to manage a threat, what threat? Let's say, for example, rain, flooding, which is common in Lagos. I mean, we've experienced it a few years ago. It was really bad. The whole of Aleki axis and the whole of Highland had huge lockdown. And when it rains now, we know what happened in Lagos. But the question I've asked is that, look at some of the data. Average of 121 days of rain in a year. And we have this information through the LagosClimateMap.com. You can check it. The probability of rain every day, probability of precipitation, and the number of days you expect to rain by month. I mean, it's just a focus. Now, if we have this information, we could look at the potential of the rain, the causes and natural event, but the impacts are huge on businesses, on individual and families, and lots of other areas. What have we done? Is there a public risk assessment? Is there an analysis like this that will help businesses, individuals to be able to look at the root causes, the impacts that we know there's going to be at least 121 days rain? So what should we be doing, and who should be doing those things? How can we get the business partner, the individual, the SMEs, the people selling on the road? What can they do to partner with the states, with the authorities in terms of managing these threats which we know will happen. Well, I put somewhere there that it could also be something like trying to look at transport and carbon emission. How do we reduce carbon emission? I think there was a few weeks ago, there was a Lagos ride, a day where, I think it was in Lagos, where we had people could cycle to work at certain time of in the morning. You know, we could say, okay, how can we begin to count the number of pollution in Lagos? We want to reduce the number of cars on the road. So I know the metro, the train, the green line and the red line, I think they're coming in, which will help to reduce the number of cars. But also, how about introducing cycling path or encouraging more people to cycle to work? But what we need to do if we're going to minimize that kind of risk, so the action will be creating the cycle path, you know, encourage, giving incentive for businesses to get their staff to cycle to work. But also we need to create security, because if you're cycling and you have people mugging you, so we can prepare. Excuse me. We can do certain actions if what we want to deal with is potential of pollution coming out of the car and increasing, contributing to greenhouse emission. We can encourage more people to pick up cycling. We can encourage more people, and we can work with businesses to create tax bracket, to take tax incentives for people to leave their car. We can encourage people to do car sharing. I think we're doing that before. So we can begin to look at the number of cars on the road and how many, what's the target for us to reduce the number of cars on the road in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. So we need to have clear objectives of where we're going. And then we risk assess the objective, we begin to put action in place, have people who are accountable and responsible. And then we can begin to say, we're thinking of a risk-based approach to handling the crisis. Now, putting all this together for me, and I think, what am I trying to say? That there is a relationship between risk, setting clear goals, and performance outcome we want. In this case, we want to have a safer impact. We want to manage the climate crisis in Nigeria. So first, what's our objective? Having clear objectives of what's our climate change or climate crisis objective? Lagos, what's our objective? What are we hoping to achieve in the next year, 3 years, 5 years? How can we engage all the stakeholders together and educate them collectively? Who would be accountable? Who would be responsible? This is where risk and performance is critical. The moment we know our objectives, the next question, what will be the effect? What are the effects of uncertainties? What are the uncertain variables that will affect this goal? What are the things that will affect these goals of us achieving this effective climate, impact of climate change in our environment? And then how can we measure the performance of those who are doing it? The business, the state, and those who are leading this initiative. And so I think the clearer we are in terms of anticipating or articulating our objective, the easier we can identify the risks associated with them. And also the easier we can begin to track those that should be responsible for it. And I think on that note, my argument is that a risk-based approach to climate change has to be driven from the place of accountability and responsibility. Even though while we apply all the risk techniques, they will not do anything for us unless we sort out the governance, unless we sort out those people that are willing to be accountable, willing to take responsibility and make themselves transparent and to be challenged publicly about what they're doing. And I think that is where we can begin to resolve the risk-based approach. Sorry, I hope I've been able to give you some insight. You can follow me. As I said at the beginning, I'll show you my email with you. If you have questions, you can send it to j@conradclark. You can send me WhatsApp. Please follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on YouTube or Twitter, and I'm willing to answer your question. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to share knowledge with you. Thank you very much. Please send your question to the organizers, and I'll surely come back to answer every question. Have a pleasant session. And I hope that the little thought, this is just the beginning, has been useful. And I hope to engage with you guys more in the future. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant day. God bless. Thank you.